Ladies and gentlemen, let me tell you something unsettling, something your polite world won't say out loud. Being the nice person is often just a beautifully wrapped act of self-betrayal. You say yes when you want to scream no. You smile when your soul is exhausted. You keep the peace at the cost of your own war within. And for what? To be liked? To be accepted? To avoid the sting of confrontation? But here's the brutal truth. The more you play nice, the more invisible you become. You become easy to use, easier to dismiss, and even easier to forget. This is not kindness. This is fear. Fear disguised as virtue. And if you don't challenge that fear, you'll spend your entire life on mute, hoping someone will see you when you've made yourself unseeable. That's why you must watch this speech to the end, because until you understand why this niceness is costing you everything, you'll never stop giving away your power for free. Underscore, 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 underscore. You were not born to be agreeable. You were born to be authentic. There's a difference. Authenticity means you can be kind without being soft. You can be loving without being weak. You can care deeply, but still walk away when respect is lost. When you stop being the nice person, something shifts. People may get uncomfortable. They may call you cold, arrogant, selfish. But let them... That discomfort they feel, that's your boundary being born. That's your truth finally having a voice. And not everyone will clap for your clarity, but clarity doesn't need applause, because you're no longer performing. You're no longer seeking approval like a thirsty ghost. You've remembered who you are. Underscore, 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 underscore. So stop being nice. Be real. Be clear. Be you. Without apology. That is where your power lives. And once you taste that power, you will never go back to being liked for who you're not. You will only accept being respected for who you truly are. Underscore, 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 underscore. Would you like a version optimized for voiceover with pauses, tone shifts, or background music cues? Most people wear niceness like armor, mistaking it for a virtue, when in truth, it's often just a cover-up for something much deeper. Fear. Not kindness, not empathy, but fear. The fear of being disliked, the fear of upsetting others, the fear of confrontation, of standing alone, of being rejected. So you soften your voice, you smile more than you feel. You nod when everything in you wants to shake your head. You say, it's okay, when it clearly isn't. All because the idea of disappointing someone is more terrifying than the cost of abandoning yourself. We've been conditioned since childhood to be nice. We were rewarded when we were obedient, scolded when we challenged, praised when we sacrificed ourselves for others, and told we were selfish when we spoke up for what we needed. So what did we do? We learned to shrink. We edited ourselves. We tried to be pleasant, agreeable, and easy to digest. But in that process, we also learned how to disappear. Because when you're always trying to be who others want you to be, you slowly forget who you actually are. Niceness, in its most distorted form, becomes a tool of survival. It's how you avoid rejection. It's how you stay safe in relationships, at work, and society. But safety comes with a cost. And often, that cost is authenticity. Niceness, when rooted in fear, is not a reflection of love. It's a reflection of self-erasure. It is the art of playing small so others can feel big. It's silence when truth wants to roar. It's tolerance of what breaks your soul because you think keeping the peace is more important than honoring your own. But there comes a time when the act becomes too heavy to carry, when your body starts to rebel, when your spirit becomes restless, when the voice inside you that you've silenced for so long starts screaming in the silence, I don't want to do this anymore. And this is not just emotional exhaustion. This is spiritual rebellion. This is your soul reminding you that you were never meant to live your life, walking on eggshells, smiling through teeth that are gritted with resentment. It is one thing to be kind. It is another to be consumed. Kindness flows from overflow. Niceness, when used as a shield, drains you dry. Kindness can draw boundaries. Niceness avoids them. Kindness can say no without guilt. Niceness says yes and dies a little inside. Kindness is honest. Niceness is afraid of honesty. That's the difference. And that difference determines whether you live a life of inner peace or quiet torment. If you're always the nice person, ask yourself, what is it that I'm so afraid of losing? Is it approval? Is it love? Is it connection? And then ask yourself, is that love even real if it requires me to be someone I'm not? Fear will tell you you'll lose people if you stop being nice. But here's the truth that fear doesn't want you to hear. Yes, you might lose some people, but only the ones who benefited from your lack of boundaries. Only the ones who needed you to stay small to feel big. And what you gain in return? You gain yourself. You gain the deep, unshakable peace that comes from not needing to pretend anymore. You gain respect, not just from others, but from within. You start to feel powerful in your own presence again. And that feeling, that's worth everything you thought you were losing. You were not born to be liked. You were born to be free, to be whole, to be you, unfiltered, unapologetic, alive. And real freedom begins the moment you stop letting fear dictate your behavior and start allowing your truth to lead. It's not always easy. Sometimes it means sitting in silence when others want you to comfort them. Sometimes it means walking away when staying would cost you your sanity. Sometimes it means being misunderstood. But that is the price of liberation. Stop being the nice person who's afraid to be disliked. Be the honest person who is no longer afraid to be seen. That's where your real life begins. Being too nice often comes at the cost of your own boundaries, and most people don't realize just how dangerous that is until it's too late. When you're always agreeable, always accommodating, always saying yes, even when your heart whispers no, you begin to dissolve your own limits. You start living for others while slowly abandoning yourself. It doesn't happen all at once. It creeps in, quiet. You agree to stay longer at work, even though you're exhausted. You listen to someone vent for hours, even though you're emotionally drained. You lend money, time, energy, again and again, because you don't want to seem rude, selfish, or unkind. But what you're really doing is teaching the world that your needs come last. And once you cross that line, people will keep pushing. Not because they're cruel, but because you've shown them that your yes has no bottom. You've made yourself too available, too adaptable, too forgiving. People aren't mind readers. If you never tell them you're overwhelmed, if you never show them your edges, they'll keep coming, expecting more, assuming you're okay with the taking. Over time, your silence becomes a permission slip for others to overstep. And then you begin to resent them, not because they're bad, but because you've abandoned yourself in the name of being nice. But being too nice doesn't just affect your relationships with others, it corrupts your relationship with yourself. Each time you ignore your discomfort to make someone else comfortable, you fracture your own integrity. Each time you smile while swallowing your truth, you chip away at your own self-worth. You become more reactive, more bitter, more exhausted, and less in control. And yet, you continue the pattern because you've built your identity around being the good one, the easy one, the agreeable one. And now, to say no feels like betrayal. To ask for space feels like violence. To assert your needs feels unnatural, selfish even. But ask yourself this: what kind of person do you become when you constantly give beyond your capacity? What kind of life are you building if it's based on pleasing others at the expense of your peace? Being nice should never mean being spineless. It should never mean self-erasure. Real love, real connection, and real respect, those things require boundaries. They require the ability to say, this is where I end and you begin. Without that, there is no real relationship. Only dependence, only performance. Only quiet resentment behind a well-trained smile. Most people who are too nice are not genuinely kind. They're just scared. Scared of confrontation. Scared of being disliked. Scared of making waves. So they make themselves small and call it compassion. They avoid conflict and call it peace. But there is no peace in self-abandonment. There is only silent suffering. You must understand, boundaries are not walls, they're definitions. They define what you allow, what you accept, what you're willing to give and receive. Without boundaries, your life becomes a blur of obligations, a blur of exhaustion, a blur of other people's expectations, shaping your every decision. Being too nice makes you predictable, and predictable people are easy to manipulate. When others know that you'll always say yes, always help, always comply, they begin to use that to their advantage, often unconsciously. And what happens then? You lose control of your time, your energy, your voice. You become a passenger in your own life, hoping someone will notice how much you're doing, how tired you are, how badly you need someone to care for you the way you care for them. But here's the painful truth. No one will ever protect your boundaries for you. That's your job. That's your responsibility. And when you finally start saying no, when you finally start drawing lines and honoring your limits, some people won't like it. They'll push back. They'll say you've changed. They'll call you cold, distant, difficult. But that's not your problem to fix. That discomfort they feel is the result of your clarity. And your clarity is not a problem. It's a sign that you've started to reclaim your space. Stop equating being nice with being good. You can be kind and still say no. You can be loving and still walk away. You can be generous and still refuse to be used. You are allowed to have limits. You are allowed to protect your energy. You are allowed to matter in your own life. The world doesn't need more nice people. It needs honest people. People who know where they stand. People who respect themselves enough to draw the line and hold it, even when it's uncomfortable. Because that's where your power lives, in the boundaries you once feared, but now stand by. The world doesn't reward people for being agreeable. It rewards people for being clear, grounded, and unshakably themselves. You may think that by being overly nice, always saying yes, always pleasing, you're doing the right thing, that you're making life smoother for yourself and others. But the truth is, while people might like you for it, they don't respect you. They don't admire you, because respect is not born from compliance. It's born from conviction, from someone who knows who they are, what they stand for, and where their line is drawn. Think about it. The people you admire most, are they the ones who bend to every request, or the ones who walk in truth even when it's inconvenient? Are they the ones who mold themselves to fit every situation, or the ones who walk in with a quiet certainty, a calm presence that commands attention without even trying? Respect doesn't come from how agreeable you are. It comes from how deeply rooted you are in your own values and how willing you are to protect them. When you're constantly trying to be the nice person, you often fall into the trap of becoming a chameleon, adapting yourself to every room, every opinion, every mood. And that might make you likable on the surface, but it erases your identity underneath. You become whatever others need you to be, and in the process, you lose who you truly are. You become forgettable, not because you're not valuable, but because your essence gets watered down by your own need to be accepted. But people don't remember the ones who blend in. They remember the ones who stand out, the ones who speak when it's uncomfortable, the ones who say no when it's easier to agree, the ones who don't chase approval because they've already given it to themselves. That's what respect looks like. It's not loud or aggressive. It doesn't need to dominate a room. It's quiet confidence. It's being at peace with who you are and refusing to let anyone distort that. When you constantly prioritize being liked, you surrender your power. You trade your authenticity for validation, your clarity for comfort, your truth for approval. And here's the irony. The more you do that, the less people take you seriously, because they can feel it. They can sense the hesitance in your voice. They notice when you avoid confrontation, when you sidestep difficult conversations, when you nod along instead of standing your ground. It's subtle, but it's there. And it teaches them, consciously or not, that you're not someone who protects your values, that you're not someone who leads. You follow, and that's where respect is lost. You need to understand that being respected and being liked are not the same. One is rooted in how others feel about you. The other is rooted in how you feel about yourself. People may not always like what you say, especially when it challenges them, when it confronts their comfort, when it disrupts the image they have of you. But if it comes from a place of truth, of strength, of integrity, they will respect it. They may argue, they may disagree, but deep down they'll know you're real. And realness always commands a different kind of attention, an attention that isn't shallow, but lasting. It's not about being rude or harsh, it's about being true. It's about choosing clarity over comfort. It's about standing in your truth, even when it means standing alone. Because when you do that, you become untouchable, not in the sense of being above others, but in the sense that your self-worth no longer depends on them. You're not seeking permission to be yourself. You're not looking for applause. You've already arrived in your own sense of wholeness, and nothing outside of you can shake it. Stop seeking to be liked by everyone. Start living in a way that makes you respect yourself first. Speak when it matters. Say no when it's needed. Honor your values even when it's uncomfortable. And understand deeply that the world may not always clap for you when you stand in your power, but the right people will notice. And more importantly, you will notice. You'll feel the quiet strength that comes from no longer chasing validation, but embodying truth. Respect doesn't come from how many people like you. It comes from how many people fear you, how many people see that you live by something real. And that only happens when you stop performing, stop pleasing, and start being unapologetically yourself. There's a common misunderstanding in the world that niceness and kindness are the same thing, that being nice makes you a good person, a compassionate one. But look deeper and you'll see they're not only different, they're often opposites. Niceness is about appearances. It's about comfort, about approval, about not making waves. Kindness, on the other hand, is about truth. Real kindness comes from depth, from clarity, from strength, not from the desire to please. Niceness is reactive. It's a performance, molded by what others expect from you. It's saying what people want to hear, not what they need to hear. It's smiling when you feel like breaking, agreeing when you want to walk away, and sacrificing your time, energy, or values just to keep things smooth. But that smoothness is often a lie. It's peace built on self-suppression. It looks good on the surface, but underneath there's resentment, fatigue, confusion. That is not kindness. That is self-abandonment dressed as virtue. True kindness has nothing to prove. It doesn't need to be seen or praised. It's quiet, grounded, and often challenging. It knows when to say no. It knows when to walk away. It doesn't enable harmful behavior under the disguise of compassion. It confronts when confrontation is needed, not to harm, but to heal. It doesn't flatter. It speaks with honesty, even when the truth is uncomfortable. Because genuine kindness cares more about what's right than what's easy. When you're too focused on being nice, you're often not being real. You're editing yourself in every interaction, filtering your words to fit what others want. But the problem with that is clear. You can't build authentic relationships through performance. People may like the version of you that never disagrees, that never asks for anything, that always gives and never expects. But that version isn't you, it's a mask. And masks don't connect, they just reflect. And eventually, you begin to feel unseen, unheard, and unappreciated. Not because others don't care, but because you've never shown them your full self. You see, kindness is rooted in wholeness. It comes from someone who knows their worth and gives from abundance, not from emptiness. A kind person helps when they can, but they don't destroy themselves trying to save everyone. They understand that love without boundaries isn't love at all. It's dependency, it's chaos. Kindness doesn't flinch in the face of hard truths. It doesn't shrink when someone's upset. It knows that sometimes real love looks like space. Sometimes it looks like saying enough. Sometimes it looks like walking away, not out of bitterness, but out of self-respect. Niceness, however, is often rooted in fear. The fear of disapproval, of rejection, of being disliked. You say yes, so you tolerate the disrespect, so you absorb the emotional burden of others while ignoring your own. But that kind of giving isn't noble. It's self-neglect, and over time it erodes your sense of self. You wake up one day wondering why you're exhausted, why you feel invisible, why people don't treat you the way you deserve. And the answer is painful but freeing, because you taught them not to. You taught them you'll always say yes, that you won't speak up, that your silence means agreement, that your smile means you're fine. And this isn't your fault, it's the programming many of us were raised with. Be nice, be agreeable, don't rock the boat. But at some point, you must choose to break that pattern. Because you can either spend your life being nice and slowly disappear, or you can step into your truth and start living. When you stop being nice and start being kind, truly kind, you'll find everything shifts. People may pull away at first. Some won't understand. That's okay. Because the people who truly value you, who resonate with the real you, will stay. And the ones who only benefited from your self-erasure, let them leave. You don't need people who only love the version of you that pleases them. Kindness doesn't make everyone comfortable, but it does make everything honest. And honesty is where real connection lives. So choose kindness. Let it be fierce. Let it be gentle. Let it be real. but let it never be confused with niceness ever again, because your life is too valuable to be lived in fear of disapproval, and your truth is too sacred to be silenced by politeness. You don't owe anyone an explanation for choosing yourself. That's something most people struggle to accept, especially if they've spent their entire lives trying to meet others' expectations, trying to be agreeable, helpful, dependable, the so-called nice person. But the deeper truth is this: every time you put someone else's comfort before your own truth, you build a prison around your own spirit. And the key to that prison is permission. Permission you must give yourself to walk away from anything that doesn't honor who you are. You see, the need to explain yourself, to justify your no, to validate your decisions with endless reasoning is rooted in guilt. It's the belief that your needs are less important than others' desires. It's the conditioning that taught you to apologize for existing as you are. And when you carry that mindset, you end up living for everyone but yourself. You say yes because you're afraid they'll think you're selfish. You stay in conversations, relationships, environments that drain you just to avoid the discomfort of being misunderstood. But here's what you must realize: being misunderstood is not the same as being wrong. People will question your boundaries not because they're wrong, but because they no longer serve them. That's not your burden to carry. If someone is upset that you said no, that you protected your energies, that you chose solitude over small talk, truth over pleasing, that's a reflection of their expectations, not your character. Let them be uncomfortable. Let them talk. Let them think whatever they want, because your path isn't about their comfort. It's about your clarity. You don't need to explain why you don't want to answer every call, why you no longer tolerate disrespect masked as jokes, why you no longer say yes to every invitation, every request, every emotional emergency that people throw your way. You are allowed to grow. You are allowed to evolve. You are allowed to say, "This is no longer for me," without writing a thesis paper to prove it. Your peace is your responsibility, and you don't need permission to protect it. The truth is, not everyone will understand your journey, and that's okay. You're not here to be universally understood. You're here to be authentic. You're here to wake up in a life that feels like your own. And sometimes that means walking away silently, without drama, without defense. It means exiting a conversation with a simple, "I'm not available for this." It means leaving a space that no longer feeds your spirit, even if no one claps for you when you do. You owe yourself the life that makes sense to you, not the one that pleases everyone else. And yes, people may judge you for it. They may call you cold, selfish, distant, difficult. Let them, because those who love you in your wholeness will never need you to shrink. They won't need explanations. They'll feel your truth. And those who require your suffering to feel connected to you, that's not love. That's control. Silence is not weakness. Walking away is not cruelty. Choosing peace is not betrayal. These are acts of power. Quiet, grounded, unapologetic power. The kind that doesn't ask for approval, the kind that doesn't explain itself. Because when you truly know your worth, you don't need to convince anyone else to understand it. And here's something else. People are not entitled to access you just because they're used to having it. They are not owed your time, your energy, your presence just because you gave it freely in the past. Growth means making choices that feel right, even if they're not popular. It means honoring your evolution, even if others haven't evolved with you. It means realizing that your peace is not up for discussion. The next time you feel the urge to explain, to justify, to defend your boundaries, pause, take a breath, and remember this: you are not selfish for choosing yourself. You are not rude for saying no. You are not cruel for wanting space. You are simply reclaiming your energy, reclaiming your life. And that, in the end, is the most honest, beautiful, and necessary thing you can ever do. You don't owe them an explanation. You owe yourself freedom. The moment you stop trying to be the nice person is the moment you begin to experience your true power. It won't feel comfortable at first. In fact, it might feel like you're breaking some invisible rule, like you're betraying the role you've unconsciously played your whole life, the agreeable one, the peacekeeper, the one who puts others before themselves. But what you're really doing is ending a performance. You're choosing authenticity over approval. And that's where the transformation begins. When you drop the need to be liked by everyone, something shifts within you. You stop filtering your truth to keep the peace. You stop offering more of yourself than you have to give. You begin to say what you mean without decorating your words with sugar just to make them easier to swallow. You begin to draw boundaries without apology. And the more you do this, the more your nervous system recalibrates. You no longer feel anxious when you say no. You don't spiral after disappointing someone. You don't carry guilt for simply honoring your limits. That's not cruelty. That's self-respect maturing into freedom. People might not like this new version of you. That's expected. Not everyone benefits from your strength. Some preferred you when you were easier to manage, when you didn't question, when you smiled and nodded and stayed quiet to avoid tension. But don't let that discomfort tempt you back into self-abandonment. You don't need to go soft to be loved. You don't need to be silent to be accepted. You don't need to be available to everyone at all times to be worthy. What happens when you stop being the nice person is that your relationships become real. The fake ones fall away. The conditional ones dissolve. The ones built on you always giving, always bending, always swallowing your needs, they crumble. And that's a blessing in disguise. Because now, what's left is truth. Now, the people who stay are the ones who see you, not the performance. Now, your connections are based on mutual respect, not silent expectations. You start showing up in rooms differently. You're not seeking validation. You're not scanning faces for approval. You're rooted, grounded. You walk in with clarity, not arrogance, not defensiveness, just presence. You're no longer trying to win anyone over. You're no longer afraid of rejection because you've stopped rejecting yourself. And people feel that. They may not know what's changed in you, but they sense it. There's a quiet strength now, a calm refusal to betray your peace. You speak less but with more weight. You say no not with guilt but with grace. You choose your circle more carefully, not out of judgment, but out of discernment. And in that space, your self-worth grows. Not from the outside in, but from the inside out. You begin to trust your intuition. You begin to see how much you are giving to avoid being alone and how powerful it is to finally be okay with solitude, to no longer need to be everything for everyone, to no longer abandon your truth just to keep a seat at someone else's table. And then something incredible happens. You attract differently because energy doesn't lie. When you operate from a place of self-respect, you begin to draw in people who mirror that, people who don't need you to shrink for them to shine, people who don't feel threatened by your boundaries, but inspired by them, people who give, not just take, who listen, not just talk, who stay not because you make them comfortable, but because you make them feel something real. Stop being the nice person. Be the honest one, the clear one, the one who knows their worth, not because it's loud, not because it demands attention, but because it simply is. That's power. Not control, not dominance, but presence. And once you taste it, once you live it, you'll never go back to pretending again. So, here we are. You've spent your life trying to be the nice one, the agreeable one, the one who bends, folds, and sacrifices just to keep the peace. But the peace you've kept out there has cost you the peace within. And now you see it clearly. Being nice was never about goodness. It was about fear. Fear of rejection, fear of disapproval, fear of not being enough. But you are enough. Without pretending, without pleasing, without diluting your truth just to fit in. The moment you stop being the nice person is the moment you reclaim your life, not to become cold, but to become clear. Not to hurt others, but to stop hurting yourself. Because your time, your energy, your presence, they're sacred, and it's time the world experienced the real you. Not the mask, not the performance, but the whole, unfiltered, unapologetic you. Walk away from the need to be light. Stand in the strength of your silence. Speak when it matters. Say no without guilt. And let those who only loved your weakness be confused by your strength. Because the ones who truly see you, who truly value you, they'll never ask you to be anything less than who you are. And who you are, when you stop performing, is powerful beyond measure. Ladies and gentlemen, let me ask you something rather strange. Have you noticed how easily the world steals your peace? A word, a look, a delay, an unmet expectation. It takes nothing, a few seconds, for your whole mood to collapse. Why? Because you were never trained to stay calm in the storm. You were trained to react. And here lies the madness. We spend years learning math, science, and manners, yet no one teaches you how to remain unbothered in a chaotic world. But what if you could? What if, starting today, you could become so rooted in your own stillness that nothing could shake you, not noise, not rejection, and not even failure? Stay with me, because by the end of this speech, you won't just understand peace, you'll become it. You are not disturbed by the world. You are disturbed by the way you think about the world. And that is something no one told you growing up. The truth is, emotions don't just happen. They are shaped, fueled, and prolonged by habits of the mind you've never questioned. Most people live in a constant state of reaction without ever realizing that reaction itself is a trained behavior. From childhood, you were conditioned to respond. Someone says something hurtful, you snap back. Someone disrespects you, you defend yourself. Someone doesn't see your worth, you chase validation. All of this, we're told, is normal, natural. But it's not natural, it's learned. It's automatic. And anything automatic can be retrained. You see, life is less about what happens to you and more about what you do with what happens. The gap between stimulus and response, that tiny space, barely a breath, that's where your freedom lives. But most never stop to notice that space. They move from impulse to action like a machine running on old programming. That's what keeps them bothered, tense, reactive, trapped in a loop of emotional exhaustion. To train yourself to be unbothered, you must first learn to interrupt that loop. That begins with observation. Watch your reactions like a scientist studying a pattern. What triggers you? Why do certain words, tones, or gestures instantly light a fire in you? Who told you that being disrespected requires retaliation? That being misunderstood demands clarification? These are assumptions passed down like hand-me-down clothes, outdated, ill-fitting, and not yours. Now imagine, just for a moment, if you could pause, not forever, just a breath, one silent breath before you react. In that moment, something sacred happens. You separate from the storm. You step out of the story. You begin to realize that you don't have to engage, that you can let the world swirl around you, and you can remain still. This isn't about being cold. It's not about being numb. It's about choosing your peace over your pride. It's about knowing that not every fight is worth fighting, and not every opinion deserves a rebuttal. It's about rising above the noise, not by shouting louder, but by refusing to be dragged into chaos that doesn't belong to you. Most people confuse reaction with strength. They think defending their ego is a sign of power, but real power is calm. Real power is the one who doesn't flinch, doesn't explain, doesn't get pulled in. When you learn to pause, to watch without reacting, you take back your energy. And energy, once reclaimed, becomes clarity. You begin to see what matters. You begin to choose your responses with intention. To master this takes practice. It won't happen overnight. But every time you choose silence over impulse, reflection over reaction, you build a new muscle, the muscle of inner mastery. And eventually, it becomes natural. You'll hear the insult and not internalize it. You'll face the delay and not collapse into frustration. You'll feel the sting, but you won't identify with it. And what's left in that space? When the reaction fades? Peace. A peace that isn't loud or dramatic, but deep and unwavering. The kind of peace that can't be taken from you because you no longer outsource your emotional state to external circumstances. Understand this. Your reactions are not fixed. They're habits. Habits shaped by years of conditioning. But, like any habit, they can be broken, rewired, and replaced. The first step is awareness. The second is practice. And the third is patience, not just with the world, but with yourself. You will stumble. You will slip. You'll catch yourself reacting before you remember to pause. That's okay. That's part of the training. Each mistake is a lesson, not a failure. Over time, you'll grow, not harder, but softer, calmer, wiser. And then one day, the same storm that once shook you will pass by, and you'll barely notice. That's when you'll know you've trained yourself to be unbothered. The need to control everything is one of the deepest sources of human suffering. You may not realize it, but most of what bothers you, the stress, the tension, the anxiety, is born from the illusion that life should go exactly how you imagine it. And when it doesn't, you resist, you tighten, you react. But what if the real problem was never the world, but your refusal to let it move freely? Look closely. How many times have you allowed a delay, a change in plans, or someone else's behavior to ruin your entire day? Not because the event itself had that power, but because you expected something different. That expectation became your prison. And the moment life deviated from your script, you suffered. The truth is, most things are beyond your control. And that's not a weakness. That's reality. You can't control what people say. You can't control how others perceive you. You can't control timing, outcomes, or even your own emotions all the time. But you can choose how you respond to those uncontrollable forces. And that choice is where your power lives. But to access that power, you must let go of the exhausting need to micromanage reality. You must stop trying to fix every uncomfortable feeling the moment it arises. Let things be incomplete. Let people misunderstand you. Let the moment be messy. In doing so, you make room for something far greater than control. You make room for peace. Control is a clever illusion. It gives you a false sense of security. But peace doesn't come from control. It comes from surrender. Not the passive kind of surrender that gives up, but the wise kind of surrender that says, I can't force this, and I no longer need to. Think of the river. It flows, sometimes fast, sometimes slow. You don't fight it, you flow with it. You don't scream at the rain to stop falling. You don't demand the sun rise earlier. But when it comes to your own life, you resist every deviation. Why? Because you've been taught that control equals strength, that if you just plan better, work harder, say the right things, the world will bend to your will. But the world doesn't bend, it flows. And you can either fight that current or learn to float. Learning to be unbothered begins with this very realization. Most of what's bothering you isn't the situation itself. It's your attempt to force it into something it's not. The argument that didn't go your way, the delay that disrupted your schedule, the person who didn't behave how you expected. None of these things have the power to disturb your peace unless you cling to how things should be. Let go of the should. Let life show up as it is. When you do that, you're no longer chained to outcomes. You begin to live with more ease because you understand that your peace is not attached to conditions. It's rooted in acceptance. And acceptance is not weakness. It's not resignation. It's not saying this is fine when it isn't. Acceptance is saying this is what it is, and I will meet it without resistance. That's maturity. That's power. When you stop trying to control the uncontrollable, you begin to see clearly. You become more present. You stop wasting energy on things that were never yours to fix. And the noise around you, it begins to quiet. Not because the world becomes less chaotic, but because you no longer need it to be quiet for you to be at peace. You shift from reaction to observation. You watch the madness without joining it. You stop personalizing everything. Not because you're cold, but because you've outgrown the need to react to every disruption. Peace doesn't demand that the world calms down. Peace demands that you stop clinging to control. And when you finally do, when you relax your grip and let life move, you'll discover something extraordinary. Most of the stress you were carrying was never necessary. It was created by a mind that thought it had to manage everything. Train yourself to release. Let life unfold. Let people be. Let time pass without rushing it. Don't force the river. Float with it. And in that floating, you'll find the deepest form of strength. The strength to remain unbothered in a world that never stops moving. In a world that screams for attention, silence has become a rare and misunderstood power. We've been conditioned to think that silence means defeat. That if you don't respond, you're weak or passive or afraid. But this belief is rooted in insecurity. Real strength doesn't need to be loud. It doesn't need to explain itself. In fact, the loudest people are often the most unsure. The truly powerful sit in silence because they know nothing speaks louder than stillness. Silence isn't emptiness. It's presence. It's the space between impulse and reaction. It's the wisdom to hold back, to observe, to resist the temptation to always answer. And yet so many people give that silence away. They feel a need to reply to every insult, defend every opinion, clarify every misunderstanding. They give their energy to noise, not because they want to, but because they fear what might happen if they don't. But here's the truth. Most battles aren't won by shouting louder. Most problems aren't solved by explaining yourself endlessly. In fact, some of the most powerful moments in your life will be the ones where you choose not to engage, where you feel the pull to react, but instead you remain still, not out of fear, but out of knowing that your peace is more important than proving a point. Silence disarms people. It confuses those who expect a reaction. It interrupts the cycle of chaos. When someone tries to provoke you and you don't give them what they're looking for, their power dissolves. You don't have to fight to win. Sometimes you win by not showing up to the fight at all. And yet this kind of silence isn't easy. It requires incredible discipline. It requires you to tame your ego, the part of you that wants to be right, to be heard, to be validated. But what you find once you sit long enough in that silence is something extraordinary. You don't need to be right. You don't need to prove anything, because peace feels better than control, and silence feels better than winning arguments that don't matter. We live in a reactive culture. Everything is fast, instant replies, instant opinions. But silence interrupts that rhythm. It creates a pause, a sacred space that allows for clarity. When you are silent, you can see the situation for what it really is, not just what your emotions tell you it is. You stop fueling the fire, and in doing so, you rise above it. And silence isn't just for conflict, it's for life. In moments of uncertainty, silence brings you back to yourself. In times of pain, silence allows healing to happen. In times of confusion, silence is how wisdom speaks. Most people are too busy talking to ever hear themselves think. But the truth is, your deepest answers come in the quiet. That's where clarity lives. Really unbothered doesn't mean you don't feel. It means you don't let those feelings control your behavior. Silence is the container for that strength. It's the space where you regulate your emotions instead of releasing them recklessly. It's the space where you listen instead of speak, where you reflect instead of defend. It's not suppression, it's presence. People will misunderstand you. They'll misjudge your silence as weakness. Let them. That's not your burden to carry. You're not here to perform for the world. You're here to master yourself. And part of that mastery is learning when to speak and when to remain still. The world doesn't need more noise. It needs more people who can sit in silence and remain grounded, who don't need to post every thought, defend every choice, or broadcast every emotion. People who understand that silence is not the absence of something, it's the presence of everything that matters. The next time you feel the urge to respond, to react, to prove yourself, pause. Let the silence speak for you. Let your calm become your response, because there's a level of peace that comes not from having the last word, but from not needing one at all. That is true power. That is self-respect. That is the beginning of becoming unbothered, not because the world is quiet, but because you are. Your attention is not just something you give away. It's the very currency of your life. Whatever you focus on, you feed. And whatever you feed grows. Yet most people have no idea how much of their energy is spent on things that don't nourish them. Petty conflicts, other people's opinions, imagined problems. past regrets, and future fears. They give their attention away like loose change, scattered across moments they'll never get back. The truth is, your attention is sacred. It's not meant to be wasted on every distraction, every notification, or every drama that presents itself. But in today's world, distraction has become the norm. You are constantly pulled in different directions, trained to react, to scroll endlessly, to consume without reflection. And slowly, without noticing, your mind becomes a crowded room filled with voices that don't belong to you. Your peace is traded for noise. Your clarity is buried under chaos. But here's the powerful realization. You can take it back. You can become deliberate about where your focus goes. You can train yourself to become selective, intentional, disciplined. The ability to stay unbothered isn't just about emotional control. It's about attention control. Because what disturbs your peace the most is not what happens around you, but what you give your attention to. A person who has mastered their attention has mastered their inner world. They don't invest in meaningless conversations. They don't chase every argument. They don't spend their mornings thinking about people who aren't thinking about them. Instead, they direct their energy toward growth, toward truth, towards stillness. They understand that peace is not something you find. It's something you focus on. When you give your attention to negativity, it multiplies. The more you talk about the pain, the more it expands. The more you focus on what's missing, the more lack you feel. But when you begin to redirect your awareness to gratitude, to purpose, to presence, your entire experience shifts. Nothing outside of you changes. You change. And that changes everything. This is why being unbothered is not a passive state. It's a skill, a practice, a discipline. You must train yourself to ignore what doesn't serve you, not by pretending it doesn't exist, but by refusing to give it your energy. You must remind yourself that not every opinion needs to be heard, not every insult needs to be answered, and not every emotion needs to be acted upon. The people who remain calm in chaos are not numb. They are aware. They've simply learned how to protect their attention like it's sacred territory, because it is. Every time you react to something that doesn't matter, you lose a little more of yourself. But every time you choose to stay grounded, you gain power. You grow roots that go deeper than the storms around you. Don't give your mind away so easily. Don't let your peace be held hostage by things that will not matter a week from now, let alone a lifetime. Ask yourself often, is this worthy of my attention? Does this bring me closer to who I want to be? Or am I feeding noise that leads nowhere? You must become the guardian of your mind. You must filter what enters. You must learn to turn inward and ask, where is my focus going today? What am I building with the thoughts I allow? Because your attention is a builder. It is shaping your reality moment by moment. And if you don't choose where it goes, the world will choose for you. And it will not choose peace. So, become intentional. Protect your focus like your life depends on it. Because it does. Withdraw from things that drain you. Walk away from conversations that go nowhere. Stop arguing with people committed to misunderstanding you. None of that deserves your energy. Direct your attention inward, toward silence, toward clarity, toward the small, quiet truths that live beneath the noise. Feed those things, water them, let them grow. In a distracted world, a focused mind is a superpower. And once you learn to master your attention, You no longer need to control everything around you because your peace no longer depends on it. It lives where it always did, within you, protected by what you choose to see, to hear, and to hold. That's how you become unbothered. Not by shutting the world out, but by knowing what is worth letting in. Most people think strength is found in how loud you can be, how quickly you can respond, how aggressively you can defend yourself. But true strength is much quieter than that. It doesn't rush. It doesn't panic. It doesn't need an audience. True strength is the ability to choose your battles, to walk away when something is beneath you, to stay calm when others expect you to break, and to remain grounded even when your emotions beg for chaos. And the reason so many are easily bothered, triggered, or thrown off course is because they haven't yet developed this kind of strength. They still believe that reacting to everything is necessary, that if they don't respond, they'll be seen as weak, that if they don't defend themselves, people will get away with things. But here's the paradox. The stronger you become, the less you need to react. The more stable you are inside, the less the world outside can shake you. You have to train yourself not to give in to every emotional impulse. That's what separates strength from reactivity. Anyone can get angry. Anyone can lash out. That doesn't take power. It takes lack of power. But the one who pauses, the one who breathes, the one who looks at the chaos and decides not to dance with it, that person is operating from a deeper place, a place of inner clarity. And clarity is a form of quiet power. Imagine a flame. You are the flame. But when you are untrained, the wind controls you. Every breeze moves you. Every storm threatens to blow you out. But when you develop inner stability, when you grow strong from within, you become like a contained fire. Fierce, but unmoved. Powerful, but not destructive. That's what it means to be unbothered. Not that nothing touches you, but that nothing controls you. Strength is not loud. It is still. It doesn't argue for attention. It doesn't fight to be heard. It stands alone, firm and centered, because it doesn't need the world's validation. The moment you realize that you don't have to prove anything to anyone is the moment you begin to reclaim your energy. And with that energy, you can build, you can heal, you can grow, not in reaction to others, but in alignment with who you're becoming. But here's the part no one tells you. To reach that kind of strength, you will be tested. People will poke at your silence, hoping you'll break. Life will put obstacles in your way, hoping you'll react with fear. And your mind will whisper doubts, hoping you'll give in. But these are not setbacks. These are invitations. Each moment, a doorway to mastery. When someone disrespects you, you have a choice. Match their energy or rise above it. When life doesn't go as planned, you have a choice. Fall apart or adapt. When you feel overwhelmed by emotion, you have a choice. Collapse into reaction or hold your ground with calm awareness. Strength is found in those choices, made quietly, consistently, every day. Being unbothered isn't about suppressing your feelings. It's about mastering your relationship with them. You feel the emotion, but you don't let it steer the wheel. You acknowledge the discomfort, but you don't let it write your story. That kind of strength builds resilience. It makes you untouchable, not because you avoid pain, but because you've learned how to face it without losing yourself. And this strength, this unshakable peace, doesn't come from fighting the world. It comes from building something stronger inside than anything the world can throw at you. It comes from discipline, from self-awareness, from stepping back instead of stepping in, not because you're afraid, but because you're focused on something higher. Your growth, your truth, your future. Ask yourself, What am I giving my power to? Where am I leaking energy through unnecessary battles? And what would it look like if I chose stillness over struggle? The answers won't always be easy, but they will lead you to a strength that needs no defense. Because the most powerful person in the room is never the one who speaks the loudest. It's the one who knows they could speak, could fight, could win, but chooses peace instead. That's the essence of being truly unbothered. That's the quiet strength the world can't take from you. One of the greatest shifts you will ever make in your life is learning to place your energy where it matters most. Until then, you'll continue to waste your power on people, places, and problems that don't deserve a second of your attention. You'll feel drained, confused, emotionally fragile, not because life is too heavy, but because you keep carrying what isn't yours. You get pulled into noise. You try to fix things that were never your responsibility. You invest in what does not return, peace. But the moment you begin to align your energy with your purpose, your healing, and your peace, everything changes. You no longer tolerate the things you once did, not out of arrogance, but out of awareness. You stop being reactive. You stop explaining. You stop giving yourself to every situation that calls your name. Because now you understand your energy is your life, and you will no longer hand it out like it costs nothing. Energy management is not a trendy concept, it's survival. Because everything you do, every word you speak, every thought you entertain, every person you allow into your space either nourishes you or depletes you. There is no neutral exchange. You are either building something within or you are being drained. The truly unbothered don't just let things go. They are wise about what they let in. They don't spend their days trying to be liked, understood, or valued. Their attention is fixed on what feeds them, not what feeds on them. You'll notice that as you become more conscious of your energy, you'll start leaving conversations that once excited you. You'll walk away from arguments that once made you feel powerful. You'll feel no urge to correct people who misunderstand you, because now you know clarity lives inside of you. Peace is an inside job. The outer world can only offer distraction. It cannot offer direction. Being unbothered is not about pretending you don't care. It's about knowing where to place your care wisely. It's knowing that not every situation deserves your truth. Not every insult deserves your focus. And not every cry for attention deserves your gaze. It's learning to ask yourself, is this worth the cost of my energy? And if the answer is no, you walk away. Not out of pride, but out of alignment. When your energy is sacred, you no longer try to control outcomes. You simply invest in the right process. You no longer chase. You attract, not because of magic, but because your energy is clear, grounded, and intentional. People feel that. Life responds to that. You stop begging for peace and start creating it. And when things try to pull you out of that space, you don't panic, you return. Over and over with discipline. Protecting your energy also means protecting your thoughts. You can't be unbothered if your mind is a battlefield. You must become mindful of what you replay, what you hold on to, what stories you tell yourself. Not everything that enters your mind belongs there. Just because a thought appears doesn't mean you need to follow it. Just because a fear rises doesn't mean you must bow to it. You begin to recognize the inner noise and choose not to entertain it. You start feeding what's quiet, what's true, what's gentle. That's real strength. Training your mind to support your peace rather than sabotage it. And that doesn't happen overnight. It's a daily practice of redirection. a constant return to the present moment where power actually lives. Letting your energy flow toward what matters most also means surrounding yourself with peace. This could be time alone, it could be nature, it could be someone who doesn't need to speak loudly to be felt deeply. Whatever it is, you start choosing environments that support your calm. Not because you're escaping life, but because you're preparing to engage with it more powerfully. You become less available, not out of rudeness, but out of respect. Less reactive, not out of apathy, but out of wisdom. Less attached, not because you don't feel, but because you no longer let feelings define your direction. This is what it means to be truly unbothered. Not cold, not indifferent, just aligned and free. As you move through this life, ask yourself each day, where is my energy going? And if it's not going toward your healing, your truth, your purpose, or your peace, redirect it. Because once your energy is placed with intention, you become unstoppable. Not because the world becomes easier, but because you are no longer wasting yourself on what does not build you. You become clear, you become calm, and in that calm, nothing disturbs you. Not because you ignore life, but because you finally understand how to live it. And so, the path to becoming unbothered is not about pretending you don't feel. It's about learning to master what you feel. It's not about avoiding the world. It's about moving through it with intention, clarity, and peace. You are no longer here to react to everything that shakes the surface. You are here to become rooted, so deep within yourself that no storm can uproot you. You don't need to explain yourself. You don't need to prove anything. You don't need to fight battles that aren't yours. Let silence be your strength, stillness your shield, and self-awareness your sword. Train your mind to stay calm. Train your energy to flow only where it matters. And remember, the most powerful version of you is the one who remains composed when the world tries to pull you apart. Protect your peace like it's sacred, because it is. Walk away when needed. Speak only when it adds value. And above all, focus on your growth, not the noise. That's how you rise. That's how you win. That's how you become unbothered, not just for a moment, but for a lifetime.